Hey, what's up, guys? Just doing a video, I actually wanted to talk about my diagnosis because I've been getting some comments from people. Somebody sent me a message actually asking about if I remembered how it felt to be diagnosed. And I think that if you hear my story and you realize that I've been in remission for over a decade, you might think that I forget that, but I definitely don't. I can remember it pretty vividly. So I thought I'd share that story, at least the day I was officially diagnosed. It's a little bit of a backstory. So I pretty much was having autoimmune symptoms, or symptoms that I thought was likely Crohn's or colitis. When I looked it up, my symptoms fit the bill. Went to the doctor and I was pretty much saying I'd like to be tested for this. He sent me for some general tests initially, which came back and he said, I don't think you have Crohn's or colitis. I was the one that was adamant to say, I think I do. 2 people in my family have an IBD, so I'd like to be tested further. So I requested that I go for a colonoscopy, and then he also sent me for a CT scan, which is when you go through the small bowel follow through. You drink that chalk stuff, and they see how your bowel's functioning and how everything's being processed. So I was waiting on those results. So the day that I was actually supposed to go and get my diagnosis or meet with the doctor, I remember that very vividly. Because I woke up, my appointment was really early in the morning. So I woke up, I looked out the window, it was in the middle of a snowstorm. And here in Canada, it's crazy. It was super cold. It was minus 30, blowing snow. All I was hoping is that my car was going to start. Ran outside, my car didn't start. So I was like, hey, obviously running a little bit late, car didn't start. All I could think of is that I could call my brother and maybe ask him to borrow his car. So that's what I did. Took a few calls, and then he eventually answered the phone and said, sure, you can take my car. So I ran the few blocks down the street to go pick my brother's car up. And then from there, it was a race on to get to the hospital. And on my way, I'm driving, and my brother had this little Honda Civic at the time. So I'm driving, an SUV pulls out in front of me, and I had to go to avoid him. So I went around him and then tried to go back in the lane. And in that process, I spun out of control. I did a 360 and I smoked another car. I slammed the car onto the sidewalk and it came in contact with the actual building, which was some kind of business. And the funny thing is, it was an auto body business. I looked around to see if there was anybody there that I could talk to, but nobody was there. Nobody that I could see that I could find to actually talk to explain that situation. So I just wrote a quick note saying I was sorry and that I was at fault, posted it on the window, and then I got back to driving to my appointment. So I get close to the hospital, but at that time I was way too cheap to pay for parking. So I parked like 5 blocks away, parked my car or the closest place that I can get free parking. And then I proceeded to run in the direction of the hospital. I eventually got to the hospital and I was probably just about 5 minutes late, which wasn't too bad considering the entire events that led to me getting to the hospital. So then I sat down and I remember the doctor coming in and he said, it's official, you do have Crohn's colitis. And he said the severity was a 9 out of 10, so saying it was really severe. And then he went on to tell me what my treatment options were, and he said that I could go on a drug called 6-MP. That's what he recommended, which is actually a mild chemotherapy drug. Now thinking about it, I was like, they're going to put me on a chemotherapy drug? Like, that sounds pretty crazy. And then he said I was also a candidate for getting a resection. So pretty much when they cut you open and they cut some of the diseased tissue, it allows people to live a better life that way. But the only thing with that is that they have to keep on doing it, so that every few years they might have to cut pieces of your intestine out. And I remember my head was spinning. I didn't know what I wanted to do. And then I asked him, I was like, does diet have anything to do with it? Like, if I change my diet, could it improve it? And he said, no, your diet has nothing to do with you getting sick. And it won't really affect the outcome of your condition. And all I knew is I didn't want to be on drugs. I didn't want to be on medication for my entire life, nor did I want to get my stomach cut open. Those are just things that I didn't want to do. So the only thing that I could think of at that time was just to say, can I think about it for a week or two and come back to you and we can talk about it at my next appointment? And he was okay with that. So that worked out pretty good. And then I remember getting back to the car and driving home, and my head was spinning, you know what I mean? Because I think when I was going there, I had this small this small bit of hope that maybe he was going to tell me that I didn't have an IBD. He was going to tell me that I just had IBS or something very similar. But yeah, he smashed my hope with a hammer, and it didn't work out that way. So when I got home, I remember, I think I put a movie on or something. I didn't feel like doing anything. So I sat on the couch. I was watching a movie, and all of a sudden my head was just spinning. All I could think about was the worst things about how bad my life was going to be. How was I going to be able to earn a living if I was going to be sick all the time, and if I had to get operations, and I was going to be constant flare-ups? Because that's all I was reading when I went online, is about how bad these people's lives were and all the things that they had to suffer, and they were on disability, and it was. And at that point in time, there wasn't a lot of hope. That you didn't really have like YouTube with a bunch of videos and people telling you their success stories. It was just more like looking on forums, and it was, people, lots of people, more than anything, it was people that were victims for a long time, and they just suffered for a long time. So that's all that I thought that was going to happen to me. And I remember feeling, just super insecure, being in my 20s. I was thinking about how am I going to attract a mate? And I was with a girl at the time, but I wasn't, I was just thinking how am I going to keep this girl out? I don't know. If I was going to lose weight and look sick all the time, that's horrible, What person doesn't want to feel and look attractive? But yeah, like I said, my thoughts were spiraling out of control, and all of a sudden I started having like a panic attack. My heart was beating, my breathing was off. It was brutal, and I was feeling suicidal, just having suicidal thoughts. I've never had a suicidal thought in my life, never, ever. And the only thing that I could think of to get rid of the stress in that moment was just I got down and I started doing push-ups, and I did push-up after push-up until I ultimately collapsed. So I pretty much probably did like 40 push-ups, 50 push-ups, and then I collapsed. And then I remember getting a phone call. I got a phone call out of the blue, and it was somebody that I'm pretty close with. And they were asking me how that appointment was, and I told them the situation, and I told them what I was experiencing. And he said that he'd be right over and that he had something that would help me out. And I remember when he got there, he gave me this little blue pill, and he told me to put it under my tongue, and it would dissolve and I'd feel better. And I'd say within 2 to 3 minutes, I felt better, like significantly better. And that's the only time I've ever taken a drug like that, but it worked. It definitely worked, and it was suitable for the circumstance. Like I've never been that stressed in my life. Like I've been stressed, but never to where it consumed my body on a physical level. And then after he left, I remember just thinking, but it was a lot more calm thinking than just spiraling out of control. But it was like, obviously I knew that I ultimately had an IBD, but I still had hope that I didn't. And it just became so much more real. And I thought, it was this realization of that maybe I was going to be a victim forever, and I was going to live this really crappy life. But I don't want to focus on that, because if you guys know my backstory, you know what? I was able to overcome my autoimmune disease, and I've lived an amazing life. Like I've been in remission for well over 10 years. And I've got to help a lot of people. I've got to share my story. I've got to speak with so many people that have overcome their autoimmune conditions. So if you're watching this, I think it's very normal to be a little bit scared, to probably feel bad for yourself. But what's not normal is to sit in that place and just for the long periods of time, because it's not healthy. And I think more than ever, we live in this time right now, and there's so many examples of people overcoming their autoimmune disease, achieving long-term remission. So you have a lot of reasons to have hope. You don't have to be sick. And I'm never going to tell anybody that you're stuck with this, because I don't believe that. I passionately don't believe that. I think the evidence is there that you can overcome these autoimmune conditions. And there's more and more examples. And the people that overcome it are the people that shift their lifestyles. Obviously you're going to get people that sort of take another route. So they might go a more allopathic model where they're taking drugs and then having surgeries. That tends to lead to a different place, but there are so many options that you can change your lifestyle, and you can pretty much reverse your autoimmune condition, and you can have an awesome life. So I want you to know, if you're newly diagnosed, that have hope, because there's lots of reasons to have hope. And whether you're looking at my channel or you're searching for examples on YouTube and other forums, there's so many examples of people overcoming their conditions and living an awesome life. So don't let that get you down. You don't have to be hopeless, because there's lots of opportunities to live an awesome life. And I'd love to hear from you guys. So if you want to leave a comment, you want to tell me a bit about the day you were diagnosed, or if you're just going through that process now. And if you don't feel comfortable leaving a comment, feel free to reach out, send me an email, go to my website and send me a direct email. I'd love to hear from people. But I think it's normal to feel hopeless, and it's normal to be scared. Just don't sit there forever. Don't wallow, or wallow, whatever that word is, that you just sit there and you just get lost in sorrow, I guess you can say, because you don't have to be like that. And I remember when I was diagnosed, I felt very alone, and I was very alone because I wasn't really close to my family. I didn't have a lot of close people. I was close to some friends, but I wasn't really close to my family. And it's not a good feeling to be alone, but at the same time, it's not like a lot of people understand what you're going through. But at least now, when you're watching this video, I do know what you're going through. I remember it. I remember it vividly, like it was yesterday. And especially the more that I'm talking about it now, I remember how I felt. I told you guys, I spun out and did a 360, and I smoked a car, and it got pushed into a building. That's how my day was then when I got diagnosed. It was horrible. But now I look at that day and I look at it as a better story than anything, because sometimes one of those worst days, because it's awesome to polarize compared to how I live my life now, and I love my life. I have so many great things. I'm blessed with so many awesome things in my life, whether it's family, whether it's work, the people that I'm surrounded by, or having this purpose and passion of having this channel. So you could look at this moment right now when you're diagnosed as just a low. Could it be the lowest? Maybe not. But I think it can only be up from here for the most part, at least in the long run. So thanks so much for listening. My rant is over. I'm going to go enjoy the day. You guys have an awesome day, and thanks for tuning in.